Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be talking about one of the trial design domain, that is the TI domain. TI domain contains all the inclusion and exclusion criteria for the trial and thus provides information that may not be present in the subject level data on inclusion and exclusion criteria. The I domain, that is the inclusion exclusion criteria not met, contains records only for inclusion and exclusion criteria that are not met by the subject. So there is a very clear difference between the I domain and the TI domain, which is also considered as one of the most important interview questions here. So when we talk about the TI domain contains one record for each of the inclusion and exclusion criteria mentioned in the protocol for the trial. Whereas the I domain will only contain the inclusion and exclusion criteria which are not met by the subject. The structure of TI domain is one record per inclusion exclusion criteria. The topic variable is the TSCD, which is same as the inclusion exclusion domain, which is the I domain. The required variables are study ID, domain, the topic variable, which is the TSCD, then the test and cat. There are permissible variables also, which is the I subcategory, the TIRL and TIVERS, which is the trial inclusion versions variable. We will be talking about more on these variables and its significance in a TI domain in the coming video. The ISCAT can be used to distinguish criteria for a sub-study or to categorize the inclusion-exclusion criteria as major or minor exceptions. Whereas the TI version gives the number of the version of the inclusion-exclusion criteria. It may be omitted if there is only one version for the complete study. Let's talk about the TI assumptions. If inclusion-exclusion criteria were amended during the trial, then each complete set of criteria must be included in the TI domain. The TI version is used to distinguish between the versions. When we say the inclusion criteria or the exclusion criteria are amended during the trial, what we mean is that the criteria which was initially mentioned in the protocol is either removed from the study or there was a different text being added or substituted for the existing criterias. We will see this again in the coming video, one of the examples where the inclusion exclusion criteria were amended during the trial. There is another possible scenario where the protocol version numbers are changed during the studies. So in case a protocol has 1, 2, 3, and 4 versions, but if the inclusion exclusion criteria is changed through version 1 to version 3 and was changed only in version 4, then there will be two set of inclusion exclusion criteria in TI, one for version 1 and one for version 4. As we have talked about that if the inclusion exclusion individual criteria are changed, then those are treated as new criteria with the new test series values. Individual criteria do not have versions. Please note here that it is important to have the test CD and the test in 1-to-1 mapping ratio. That is, for one particular test code, the test code, we should have only one particular test. We cannot have one test code defined for multiple test and vice versa. So this is what I mean by when I say that it should be in the 1:1 ratio. The last assumption in TI domain is that if the criteria text is greater than 200 characters or less than 200 characters, then how it has to be populated. As we know that a particular variable in SAS dataset can have the character up to a limit of 200 characters only. So in that scenario, if the criteria text is less than 200 characters, it goes in IE test without any issue. But if the text is greater than 200 characters, then we put the meaningful test in I test variable and describe the full text in the study metadata. Study metadata is mentioned either in your SDRG, where we can mention the complete text of the inclusion exclusion criteria there. But in case of SAS dataset, we can only put up to 200 characters. So now let's see what these assumptions mean with the help of an example. This example shows records for a trial that has two versions of inclusion exclusion criteria. You can see that row number 1 to 3 shows the inclusion criteria and exclusion criteria of version 1 of the protocol. There are two inclusion criteria and one exclusion criteria. Row 4 and 6 shows the inclusion criteria for the version 2.2 of the protocol, which changed the minimum age of entry from 21 years to 18 years. So you can see that in the protocol version 1 and in protocol version 2.2, there was only one change, which is that the text part of the IE test for inclusion criteria 2 was changed. So because of this change, uh, all the set of inclusion exclusion criterias are repeated again with the amended protocol versions, that is the version 2.2 here, with having the different IE test code defined for the updated or the amended IE test value. That is, right now you can see that the IE test code, which was initially mentioned as INCL02, has been changed to INCL02A. Here, the one-to-one ratio mapping of IE test CD and IE test is being maintained. Please note there here that the TI version is defining the values of the protocol versions where the complete set of from which the complete set of inclusion exclusion criteria are being taken. Another point to note here is that although there were at least three versions of the protocol, that is, if I say the protocol version 1, then the protocol version 2, 2.1 and 2.2, uh, assuming from the values that the latest one which is mentioned in this example is 2.2, then only the versions which are having a change in the inclusion criteria is being used in this case. We are not having any set of IE criteria being defined in a trial inclusion exclusion domain with the protocol version 2 or 2.1. Only the initial one and the one where the criteria has been modified are being mentioned here. For more detailed explanation on this example and another possible SDTM questions on this and SDTM interview questions on this, you can watch my earlier video which I have covered in further details on how these questions can be asked and what should be the answer for those. Thanks for watching. Let me know in comments if you want me to cover any topic.